Hello, everyone. Today is February 25th, 2020. We are looking at some reflections from the prayer recollection with Luke 14, 7 through, let's see, what was it? 7 through 14. Excuse me. So let me read that for us. When Jesus noticed that all who had come to the dinner were trying to sit in the seats of honor near the head of the table, he gave them this advice. When you're invited to a wedding feast, don't sit in the seat of honor. What if someone who is more distinguished than you has also been invited? The host will come and say, "Give this person your seat." Then you'll be embarrassed, and you'll have to take whatever seat is left at the foot of the table. Instead, take the lowest place at the foot of the table. Then when your host sees you, he will come and say, "Friend, we have a better place for you." Excuse me. Then you will be honored in front of all the other guests. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Then he turned to his host. When you put on a luncheon or a banquet, he said, don't invite your friends, brothers, relatives, and rich neighbors, for they will invite you back, and that will be your only reward. Instead, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. Then, at the resurrection of the righteous, God will reward you for inviting those who could not repay you. So, good stuff here today. First of all, I just want to say that in reading this today, I read it so differently than I've ever read it in the past. I think I grew up with this sense of believing that you had to have a false humility and put on an air of humility, and I didn't realize, like even, just not to put people out, just to kind of try to consider yourself lowly, which is ironic because I have had such a struggle with pride and ego my whole life. But I can remember this one time when I was in Sunday school. I was a little girl, maybe, I don't know, 7 or 8 probably, who knows. And the teacher was talking about manna, and she had brought honeycomb cereal and said, this may be what manna tasted like. She passed it around for all of us to try, and I, under the mistaken belief, assumed that I had to be, I couldn't put her out, and I had to be kind of minimize myself, and I didn't take any, even though I would have loved some of that honeycomb cereal. So I was just really misguided about, my view of myself. And like I say, and in the end, it didn't even help me because I had so much egotism and still wrestle with egotism. So anyway, reading it today, I'm experiencing it a little differently, and it's so awesome. So the first thing that I notice here is that it says that the people who were invited to a dinner, he noticed them trying to sit in the seats of honor near the head of the table. And I feel like, especially in light of all the sections that have been leading up to this and the way he's talking about and to the Pharisees, that what he's talking about here is the Pharisees trying to be important, trying to make themselves important. And then you come down a little bit and it says, what if someone who is more distinguished than you has also been invited? And then I think that here you're bringing in the distinguished person is Jesus or God and their presence. They are the truly distinguished one. But the Pharisees weren't making room for the true God in their hearts because they were busy on the seat of the throne themselves, taking the seat of honor themselves. So it says, give this person your seat. Oh, sorry, the host will come and say, give this person your seat. Then you will be embarrassed and you will have to take whatever seat is left at the foot of the table. So I think that when he says, give this person your seat, that made me think about that Jesus takes the seat in my heart where I sat. So the place where my ego wanted to put me, that's the place where I want to put Jesus. That's where I want to give him the seat that I tried to take in bringing myself importance. And then I think in the end, it says that you will be embarrassed when you have to give up your seat. In the end, they will be humiliated by their self-promotion. I mean, imagine if we have made ourselves, try to make ourselves the important thing instead of God. And then when the end comes and that becomes clear, how humiliating that is going to be when we realize that our whole life was about ourselves, as if we are some sort of a deity or we are some sort of an importance, and we're not. So that, yeah, that's going to be really humiliating in the end. Let's see. And then where it says, whatever seat is left at the foot of the table. One thought I had here is that your place will not be based on, if this happens to you, your place isn't going to be based on your special relationship with the host, because the only seats left down there are going to be for the people who aren't in that special relationship. And that's right, isn't it? Because you didn't make a special relationship with him. You just tried to make it about you. So let's go on. Let's see. Instead, take the lowest place at the foot of the table. And I'm thinking here that this is about basically considering yourself nothing in the shadow of God, which we are nothing in his shadow. And even another thought there is that just being invited to the wedding feast with God is enough. Just to be there in his presence, that's enough. And by the way, isn't it interesting that he chose the example of a wedding feast? It made me wonder if this was like an indirect reference to the marriage of Christ and the church, because he uses that analogy in the New Testament. So we go on. It says, then you will be honored in front of all the other guests. And what I was thinking here is that your honor will not be self-honor. In other words, I've always read this to believe like, oh, you know, when you get to heaven, you're going to be honored and really important. And that's a little bit hard because it seems kind of incongruent with the whole death to self thing. You know, what we die to ourselves now so that we can become really great and important later. Like, that doesn't feel right or like God's way. So the honor that I think we will receive, this is my thought now, again, I'm just a student, not a scholar. I think the honor that we'll receive will be his honor. Not that he will be making us honorable entities, but we will be being filled with his honor and united with him, thus becoming honorable because we're united with something, the only source of honor in all existence. So, let's see, was there anything else on there? I believe that you can only receive his exaltation when you empty yourself of your own. And that is the true order, right? Him exalted and us humble. And that when we do that, it makes room for him in us. There's no room for him in us if we try to keep that seat for ourselves. So at the end where it says, instead invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. I just pray that God will help me with this, because I just want to know how he wants me to move with that. And I'll circle back on that here in a minute. A side note, it says, then at the resurrection of the righteous. I just wonder, why does it say the resurrection of the righteous? Because does that mean that when the end times comes, only the righteous will be resurrected? And then what about the unrighteous? Will they stay asleep? I mean, dead? I think other parts of the Bible talk about them going to hell, but I guess that's not resurrection, because they're not going to get new bodies. I don't know. That's just interesting to think about. And I don't really get that. If you get it, you can tell me, because I want to know. And then it says, God will reward you for inviting those you could not repay. Those who could not repay you. And I was thinking about the sense of reward, And I think that sometimes I've thought about reward as being like you do something good and then you get a reward for being good or whatever. Um, More like almost like a payment, like you're getting payment for what you did good. And today I was thinking about maybe it's a little bit more like your reward is the result of your preparation. So the more you prepare yourself for Him and for His greatness by clearing yourself out, making space for and bringing Him in, the more prepared you are to be unified with Him in the end times. So, so it's, yeah, preparation versus payment. I don't know about that. Just a thought. And when I think about those, inviting those who I cannot repay, I really want to open my heart to what God wants here. For example, we've talked about maybe the spiritual practices retreat should be offered to people who are finishing Alpha, which I think would be really cool. And I think that in a way, I don't know that I would say those are people who can't repay, but it is offering it to people who really, at least in our setting, I don't think there's a lot of access to this type of stuff for people at that point in their spiritual path. I know there are in other places, but I don't think we have that. And so in a way, it is something that they can't repay. But I also even think about the homeless shelter. Like, does Jesus want me to take, our church has started participating in PADS, where we're in charge of helping the homeless at the PAD shelter in Crystal Lake for 1 night a week. You know, does he want me to come and offer these to the homeless people? Maybe. I don't know. I have another friend who's kind of lonely and doesn't have any family around them, and I'm thinking maybe God wants me to invite them for dinner. So anyways, just trying to be open. Jesus, I just pray that you will show me what you want from me in this. Help me to have the courage and the sensitivity to respond. And I just praise you, Jesus.